governance in regards to news first.
Yes.
Sri Lankan government and the CB remains tight-lipped about Panama Papers and some of the offshore accounts which were revealed on the Panama Papers itself. Has the CB with FIU commenced investigations with regard to this?
Yes, we have got some of those papers, and we are requesting further information from our counterparts around the world in terms of central banks as well as other investigative arms of various governments. But I don't want to jump to any conclusions in terms of names and facts that have been mentioned in the media, etc., because we have to act very responsibly. There are international conventions which cover this type of data, and we don't want to flout any of those. And even our own laws, guarantee privacy to individuals, and unless people are being prosecuted in terms of confirmed evidence in our courts of law, it would be wrong of us to give out any sort of preliminary information that could lead to libelous statements being attributed to central banks. So at this point, all I can say is that we are investigating the material. We are waiting for more material to come. There are millions of pages of documentation in this whole leak of documents. That itself is an issue, because the provenance of the material, i.e. who leaked it and all that, could lay some doubts on whether those documents are authentic. So we have to prove that the documents themselves are authentic and they are factually correct before we can proceed to any conclusions. So all that will take time. It's not going to be something that we can process in a week or a month.
Have you obtained any of the names, even though you're the one revealed?
There are various names in the documentation, but like I say, we have to check whether the documentation is authentic. People could have planted names. That's always a possibility, right? And this information came from third parties. It didn't come from the original source, the law firm in question. So there again, we have to be responsible and authenticated before any firm conclusions can be drawn.
And during the time period of 2004 and 2013, one-third of the country's wealth appears to be lost through a report that was put out yesterday by the Global Financial Integrity. When banks are suspicious of a transaction, usually the FIU is notified with regard to this. Have you been notified during that time period, or have there been any reports of notifications by the banks of money transactions during this time?
You see, these numbers that are being bandied about in these reports that you mentioned are not based on any sound calculation from what I can see. In the balance of payment statistics, which you saw being presented a few minutes ago, there are some basic principles we adopt in trying to assess where there are leakages of money. And as the world moves towards a more liberalized exchange control regime, now we in Sri Lanka want to liberalize our regime, and we've done some of that in the last few months, and we want to do more. But in a world where capital is flowing across borders seamlessly, you don't want any country to stand in the way of that, because at the end of the day, capital flows to places where it feels there's going to be a good return. And Sri Lanka is no exception to that principle. So that's the general basis on which we operate, i.e. we don't want to prevent people sending money out or bringing it in. Once you have a liberal system, hopefully people will see Sri Lanka as a desirable place to invest, and the money will come in. Now, as to the quantities that have been mentioned, I find it a bit difficult to believe that so much money has left the country. Because when you look at our balance of payments, which records transactions done through all the banks, which are fairly credible evidence of those transactions, and the value of exports and imports, etc., the difference that is unaccounted for, the so-called errors and omissions in our balance of payments, don't even amount to a fraction of the number that was being bandied around in some of these reports. So I find it difficult to believe those large numbers. And there definitely are lots of Sri Lankans living overseas, and we have people, sending money in and out. But when we look at the magnitudes, for instance, last year, about $7 billion came through official channels into the country, right? Now, if you're going to say that a similar amount left the country, I would find that hard to believe, because there's no evidence on the ground to suggest that that money left, and even if it did, it certainly didn't do so through the banking system or through legal channels. Illegal channels are very difficult to process these vast amounts. So I find it difficult to understand how that money could have been sent out in the first place.